A little bit about Nano One itself and our technology. So we call it our one-pot technology. This is a patented technology for the manufacturing of cathode active materials. Why are cathode active materials important? They represent between 40 to 60% of the cost of a lithium-ion battery cell. And we've been scaling that technology both in British Columbia and in Quebec with our very experienced operations team in Quebec. We have some very significant partners. They're both 5% shareholders. Rio Tinto, one of the world's largest mining companies, Sumitomo Metal Mining, Japan's largest and one of the world's most integrated miner refiners and cathode active materials makers. So validation from those partners on our technology is huge. And what we're looking to do and what we're focusing on today is our technology applied to LFP manufacturing specifically. And that's because it's projected to be over 50% market share by 2035, with most of that demand profile being driven outside of China. So really, I think if you wanted to simplify the way to look at our technology, it's a supply chain solution. These supply chains have to be set up regionally, localized outside of China. They have to be done cost effectively. And because there's a choke point in China where a lot of those raw materials and battery metals go through, the rest of the world has to look at alternative forms of feedstock. So an example of that in our case is iron isn't iron. And what I mean by that is you can't simply copy and paste the traditional process, because the iron that is used in the traditional process is almost exclusively available in China. And so we've developed our technology to go from other forms of iron outside of China that are battery metal suitable. So by coming together with Worley, what we're doing is we're bringing our value proposition of our technology solution together with a platform that has decades of experience delivering technology solutions. So, a company the size of Nano One, if we want to grow rapidly.
To talk a bit more about the science with Nano One, what we bring Nano One is really a process to make cathode active materials, and we bring that to the table, what we call the one-pot process. It's a process that's proven to make LFP at commercial scale with a simpler, lower cost process with reduced impact and reduced risk also versus the existing technologies used in China. We've been working with Worley, yes, to bring that design once, build many approach to be ready to deploy rapidly. Once the market is ready, we need to be able to deploy those plants. We've advanced significantly on the engineering of the large-scale production lines. We have pre-qualified equipment vendors and raw material suppliers, and that will enable faster investment decision-making when it's time to do that. And to do that, the Candiac facility is really key to all this. It provides commercial LFP right now for small volume customers. It will also help to deploy and prove the technology at scale. It will allow us to provide samples to pre-qualify customers for the larger commercial lines. And it also brings commercial and operational know-how, which is very valuable to support our licensing partners to secure offtakes. So we'll need to get that, and to commission their production plant. We have that experience to do that with the team here. And our solution is really based on IP and know-how that we control. And we designed it into our production line, so we don't depend on outside countries to bring it.
This market is just about to emerge and honestly explode. I think that's what we see as well on the Worley side. We get involved in the delivery of many of these assets, not just in the LFP space, across all sorts of cathodes and anodes and so on. And yes, we would agree that the localization of the supply chains, certainly in the Western world, Europe, North America primarily, is only just starting to occur. And that's perhaps taken a little bit slower or longer to form than people thought at the start of this decade, but it is certainly now coming on its steam. There is a ship yet to sail. In terms of what else is there available out in the industry, I mean, let me back up a little bit here. Part of Worley's strategy and in terms of our own growth in this industry has been to look at, and we continue to do this, but a couple of years ago we looked at what were all the cathode technologies that we saw emerging across the spectrum, regardless of where they were in the world and regardless of the chemistry that they were focused on. So we did our own sort of essentially internal review of what did we see. We're process engineers. We understand the finer details of how these processes work, the equipment that's involved, how much it costs to build, to operate, and so on. And ultimately, that's where we came to Nano One, and we said that looks pretty good. We'd like to get to know them. We'd like to get a bit closer. Here we are now in partnership. Quite honestly, there's nothing else that I see that is as mature and as ready to be deployed. So I think this is again. We take a little bit of time to explain this point because it is something we're being asked already in the customer engagements we're having. The part of the business that Frank is part of, which is the one part of with Nano One, sells a technology package. That is the underlying rights or access to the IP. It's the flow sheet, it's the engineering and the equipment that comes with it. There will still be a need for someone to build, to do the rest of the design and do the build of the overall facility, which is typically what we would call the EPCM role. Yes, Worley can do that, but by no means does Worley need to be that organisation doing it. It depends very much on what the customer themselves are looking for, where in the world the facility is likely to be based, and ultimately, is there a particular preference to use the synergies of the fact that Worley can supply the inside as well as build the outside, or in some cases, just supply the inside. It's kind of a horses for courses situation. We're open to all.
And I can add to that, we've seen it in our customer engagement. Some people who may want to have all of it because they don't have those resources, they're newer to the market, so they want more support. But there are others who already have dedicated EPCM, and you see it a lot with geographies and cultures. Some people are more open to the approach, others not. So we don't want to limit it to, you have to take the whole package. The first thing we want to sell is really technology.
So I think I'll address the complexity part of that first. This is a first of a kind technology, right? So we've always taken the approach, we have to de-risk the scale up of that. And that's what we've done. That's what we're doing at Candiac. We have production intent pieces of equipment making LFP today, tuning the process, the product, interacting with target customers to meet their specifications. So the complexity part of it, we are able to demonstrate the technology at scale. The cost element of it, that's why we're working with Worley and we're working with key equipment vendors to really nail down that cost of what's it going to cost me to build a production line. And on a cost competitive spec, outside of China, we feel quite confident and that we're very competitive. I think it's worth providing a little bit of anecdotal evidence from some of the customer conversations we're having. So for sure, some of those customers are looking at, hey, I can go to China, I can go work with an EPC, get a turnkey LFP plant for X million dollars, in the tens of millions of dollars. I still have to rely on buying precursor, the PCAM to LFP from China to build that. And then when they get that direct equipment cost, that quote from the EPC, then they have to start looking at, localized requirements for permitting, equipment certification, installation costs, contingencies, building costs, etc. And then they step back and they're multiples of that initial quote. And that's when they kind of realize, hey, what do we have over here? And they look at the one pot technology and we engage with them and they can see a fully integrated production system without reliance on PCAM from China and a very cost competitive process. So I just wanted to share that because I think that's something that we do come up against. I mean, that is the competition in a sense, but what you see on paper is not the reality of what people are experiencing.
Unit of operations, Alex, I'm a chemical engineer, and what I look at is really the number of unit of operations because I see the number of equipment, which brings the cost, OPEX, CAPEX, and energy, everything. And when I saw the one pot process the first time, that's what brought me to decide to join Nano One because I've been trying to make LFP for years, making it, yes, but hardly commercially competitive to China. And to do it competitive to how they do in China, you cannot do it the same way. You have to do it a better way. And that's how I saw the one pot process. Because again, I could spend a whole webinar talking just about the one pot process itself, but What the main, I would say, differentiators with the one-pot reaction is that we put everything from the beginning in the reaction, and we don't need to separate it. What comes out of the one-pot reactor is sent straight to drying. So no filtration, no byproduct, no wastewater management. So all of those unit operations to handle something that's not really valuable, you don't have those. So you save a lot of money there. And the other key differentiator is that because everything is already pre-mixed, we spend a lot less time making what we call the calcination, the last step of it. So less time means, I would say, simpler equipment to do it, that takes less space in the plant, that use a lot less energy, that allows us to really decrease the carbon footprint of everything and of the cost. So it really makes the one-pot process a lower cost, OPEX, CAPEX, energy, everything that makes it competitive. And in addition to that, it's really no reliance on either control technology from China or raw materials. Keep talking about iron, but the iron sulfate, which has at the beginning the iron source of most of the processes used in China today, is not available to that order of magnitude outside of China. It's a byproduct of a process of titanium dioxide that we don't do this way outside of China. So it's not available. We have to do it differently. That's really the big differentiation that the one-pot process brings.
Denis, continuing with you here, what does the term quote unquote ready for business mean right now?
Yeah, I think it's easy. I discussed earlier, there's a moving market. There's 4 things we needed to do: product, process, supply chain, and customers. We have come to a point where we do have a process, we have a product, we have qualified raw material suppliers, and we have engaged cell manufacturers. So we're ready to go. It's a moving world, so there will be improvement. We'll keep improving. As Greg hinted to earlier, the specs are moving. We have to continue to adapt, but we are ready to go to market with what we have right now. That's, I think, what we mean with ready for business. Maybe Frank, you want to add to that? Frank?
Yeah, sure. Sure, Denise. Yeah, and I think the process we went to together to look at the existing Candiac facility where actually the product is made, that's key. We can take customers to there and said, it's actually working at scale. We're doing it. And we looked with joint teams to give the design rules and tools a little bit of a boost. So there is engineering behind it. There's safeguarding behind it. There's control philosophy behind it. So the engineering work for the heart of the process is done, and we can put a price on that. We've estimated, we've done a full estimate and looked through everything that we did together. So all that we need to do when a real opportunity comes is look at the surrounding things, the local sites, the local requirements, the local utilities. But the heart of the process is designed, proven, and ready to be used.
I think it's a really important point to hit home, Denny. It's such an important part, both for the direct sales targeting from the defense applications, but also to show to those licensing target customers we're approaching. We've got the technology at scale, right? Come in and see it. And as Frank alluded to, you want a 25,000 ton plant. It's multiple versions of the same reactor. It's a couple of these pieces of drying equipment and then the calcination equipment on the back end. So I think the other things to look for, some updates on our existing partnerships, path to sales. I think the work we're doing with Worley on feasibility level cost estimates on a production line, that's super important. And I think the work we're doing with the key equipment vendors is also really important, because this is about taking 6 months plus of pre-qualification of that vendor, getting the technical specifications right, getting some really solid quotes from them. Again, that helps support the customer journey to get to FID. I don't know, Frank, Craig, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think what is really important, and Denis alluded to that, this market is continuously moving to new grades of material needed. We have the base material, we have a product that's sellable, but that market moves. And Greg already said, and we're really impressed with the speed and the technology knowledge from Nano One to improve or expand on the product. And from an engineering perspective, it's relatively easy because we have the base case covered, and then only the changes need to be taken a look at. And that might be a little bit of extra engineering or a different vendor for a different piece of equipment, but the base is ready, and then from there we can very easily and quickly move on to new developments. Very key development areas. Yeah.
Greg, last word to you.
Okay, last word. I would say, I mean, as the first ship sails, I think you will all be made well aware. You will be quite public about that. But there is yet a ship to sail across this industry outside of Asia. I hope we've communicated. So we are looking to be the first.